Not a matter of if, but when crisis will rock your world. I'm Roshini Rajkumar, crisis strategist and host of The Crisis Files. We are on location at Mall of America for our second annual live remote. If you know the show, you know crisis busting is our mission. If you don't and are physically at MOA, join us in the Rotunda. Everyone can check us out anytime online at thecrisisfiles.com. A true reunion right here, right now. It's the first time in more than 3.5 years. The group I'm about to introduce to you and I have all been in the same geographic space together. They are my Crisis Squad, each an amazing person and thought leader. They joined me in April 2022 to shoot the Crisis Files TV pilot. Dr. Abdul Omari is a speaker all over the country and talks on topics of inclusion and equity. Dr. Cheryl Ziegler is a clinical psychologist who has a new book, The Crucial Years. Steve Silton is a business, entertainment, and sports attorney with Cozen O'Connor. He's based here. The firm is based in Philly. Jennifer Hellman is CEO of Golf Public. She's a reputation management and PR pro. The Crisis Squad is here for the case file I call Age of Influence. All right, we're going to start with a topic that I think is going to get all of you going. You know it's coming, but I'm curious what you're going to say. Social media, is it the bane and will it cause total destruction of society? Dr. Cheryl Ziegler, we're going to start with you.
Well, I think that we have the evidence at this point to say that with the increase of social media, we have kids who can't pay attention, we have kids who aren't learning, we have the lowest reading scores we've had in 30 plus years. There's no positive metric that really comes from it. And we also have 2-year-olds. Pew Research just came out with a new study yesterday that they're spending hours and hours in front of screens and instead of doing crawling and walking and running and playing outside. So I actually do think that it's warranted to say it could be the end of the way we socially communicate with each other as we know it.
Right, and I mean, it's going to keep you in business. I mean, that's the only positive, because everyone's going to need a Dr. Cheryl Ziegler in their life, no matter where they live. Jen, you are always advising on PR and reputation. I heard this weird stat that the algorithms on, like, let's say on Instagram, are picking up what you're looking at, and they learn very quickly through their, AI, all the stuff that goes on behind the screen, and they feed you more and more of the same. So you perhaps are getting more angry, more divisive with people that disagree with you. What are your thoughts from your perspective?
Well, I mean, that's absolutely true. And I think any of you who have friends or family members who are of a different political persuasion than you, pick up their phones and take a look at their social media feeds, and it's drastically different, the information that we are being fed. I think that it's been a blessing and a curse for my clients that are trying to get information out, whether they're companies or organizations or units of government. On one hand, we get to control what information we put out. We don't necessarily need the media to do it for us. We don't need to take out advertisements. On the flip side, anybody can say anything they want, and that's including against other people, against other businesses, and there's no more source of truth. So it makes it really difficult when you get information out there that can be difficult for a company or an individual's reputation.
Dr. Abdul Omari, it's like there are no filters either. I mean, people can just press send.
Yes, absolutely. It's so quick and so fast that, we see people retracting stuff all the time, and, they said it in the spur of the moment, or all of a sudden they said it and then it got caught by some influencer who has, 700,000 followers. And it spread so quickly. And to the other points that were made about the algorithms and stuff, it's great when I want to shop on Nordstrom because they know what I like. However, when someone is deeply rooted in something or believes something and won't take in another perspective, we look for what we already believe in, and we just confirm what we already know or think we know, called confirmation bias. And it just continues to go down a rabbit hole if we don't find a place where we can break that.
What does that do in workplaces and even families? I mean, all the division is what we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of the social media, crisis is also that people are becoming lonelier and lonelier, right? And so if we think about the book Bowling Alone, literally people used to go to the bowling alley and bowl, and now they don't, right? And so then you just find yourself in these deep holes, and then when you come to family members, you don't know how to have a conversation where there's disagreement, and so then you retreat to your corners.
Steve, I'm guessing there are a lot of legal angles on this. What's kind of the first one that comes to mind?
Well, you've got to separate it from the regulation of the social media companies themselves from the regulation of what people say on those social media companies. It's been very difficult for the government across multiple administrations to regulate the actual companies. The only thing they've really focused on so far is foreign ownership of the social media companies and the divestment of that relating to essentially the aggregation of data of U.S. citizens. It isn't as difficult to essentially regulate what people say on social media. And the First Amendment gives people the right to say pretty much whatever they want, but it doesn't give them the right to do that without consequences. And I think often when people post things on social media and they think, wow, this is just my own expression, and it winds up in front of their employer, and you saw this very recently with a lot of tweets and other communications about Charlie Kirk. The employers were clamping down on that, were suspending and in certain cases actually firing them, and in those cases it's often shocking to the employee.
I'm going to share a personal situation. I'd love each of your takes, and there's no right or wrong. I'd love to hear your feedback on how I responded to this person on my Facebook just a day ago. So we're sitting here at Mall of America. It's a Thursday, and 3 days ago, the Monday at the top of the week, I was on WCCO Television, which is the CBS affiliate in Minneapolis, chatting with Heather Brown and AJ Hilton, who co-anchor that show mid-morning. It's a magazine show. They had me on to talk about the crisis in the WNBA, so I gave some crisis content. And then they were kind enough to spend some time talking about this event, promoting, inviting people to come out. So I posted some pictures from studio with them, and I made an easy link right there so people could click on the link and watch the episode. And it got a lot of likes and great comments initially. And yesterday I just saw someone posted on there, "You're an employee of WCCO, and you're being paid." And I'm thinking, wait, who is this person? And so I wasn't outraged. I wasn't going to lash out, but I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to share exactly who I am. I said, I am not employed by any media outlet. I'm a small business owner. Feel free to learn about me on my website. And I added RashiniInc.com. So that's right there. And that's what I did. I mean, I was there to talk about the crisis in the WNBA, talk about my event. And that was, just first of all, Abdul, why is this person just mad? Like, I don't even know who this person is.
I wish I could answer that. I don't know why they're mad. I think, some of the things that come to mind as far as somebody's visceral reaction is we will automatically fall into associations, right? So if you post with this person who we know one thing about, that must mean that you also believe that thing or fall into that same category as that person. And so we'll fall down those immediate associations in the same way that I think this person did, and in this case that you're explaining clearly falsely as well.
All right, what did you think of my reaction?
I mean, if you didn't know the person, the only other thing I would have just said is don't reply at all.
I definitely didn't like it. The like button was not pressed on that. Jen, our PR pro, what do you think?
Well, I think about the same thing with, I was talking to a colleague the other day who had a really bad experience at a restaurant. In fact, she got seated at 7 and she thought it was open until 9. So her and her husband were enjoying this nice meal. And all of a sudden it's like 7:45 and the restaurant said, "We kind of need you to wrap up and get out of here." And I said, that's horrible, right? She said she looked on their website. They're open till 9, but I don't know if they were just having a slow night. So I said, oh, you should go on and post about your experience. And she said, well, I was going to, but I went on and I looked at other people's posts. And when they had bad experiences, the restaurant responded in such a harsh way. She's like, I don't want anyone talking to me
You
like
don't
that.
want that on you, that
Yes.
anger put on you.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, I think that you have to be really careful, though, for your social media sites when somebody reaches out to you who doesn't know, who's upset about something, about feeding that fire. Usually it is best to ignore it or to block it.
Well, in this case, Steve, I could have deleted this person's, from the name, I think it's a man, I could have deleted this person's comment, but then I also, okay, it's my Facebook, it's a public page, Roshini Rajkumar, I'm inviting engagement. So I'm kind of thinking in my head, if he now responds more negatively, then I might do some deletion.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, you're a public figure as well, which kind of opens you up to additional scrutiny. I mean, I think social media should, frankly, and in some respects, impacts things we do outside of social media. And I'll give you an example. I had a client who was on vacation in Mexico, owns a small business, and actually had a trademark logoed hat, and was in line, and somebody thought he was cutting in line, and he wasn't. The guy, I think, was drinking. I know my client very well. He's a very even-keeled guy. And this individual went onto his website on Google and actually gave him a negative review unrelated to his core business, which is a consumer business entirely together. And he called me and asked the kind of recourse we could have. And there's things you can do. It's not easy. I mean, starting a lawsuit's generally not a good
Right,
idea.
when you get defensive, it usually ends up bad for you.
Right, and trying to remove negative comments from Google, I've done that before, can be very, very difficult. So, I mean, you need to be, from a business side, as a small business owner, you need to be very cautious. I think you handled it probably the best way you can, and sometimes just moving on, just like in public, if somebody steals your parking spot, you can go crazy and create a big incident, or you can just find another parking spot. I think social media kind of has some of those same courtesies.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes silence is the best answer for sure. Dr. Ziegler, what do you think? How'd I do on that one?
Well, two things come to mind. The first one is, on their part, this is the ugly side of social media, just that we say things, we write things potentially online that we would never say to somebody. You lose that ability to have the relationship that says, oh, really, that's what you think? Do you work for them? And then you go, no, I don't. Oh, you don't? What do you do? Right? And before you know it, 5 minutes later, you could be friends. But because we write things and they're one way and they lack that human contact, this is the divide, and this is really concerning. So I think about it from that angle. And then the other angle is interesting. It's your negativity bias, right? There might have been, who knows, dozens of people that said, congratulations, good job, I'd love to be there. But we're sitting here talking about the one person who wrote something negative or inflammatory. And that's something that, again, things like social media don't help. It's like, we all know it. It could happen in person too. Everybody could say something nice tonight. Somebody could say something really rude to me. And that's the only thing I remember or talk about when I get home. And so I think that's one of the things that I think for your side is I would rather be talking about, oh, I got this great amount of support, not the one comment that was off-putting.
So, as always, when the doctors speak, I'm writing down. So, Abdul reminds us that we automatically fall into associations, and that can be harsh. Cheryl reminds us, I maybe had some negativity bias, or others can. I'll tell you, it was my former profession bias. I am a former TV reporter. The facts matter. He was factually incorrect. Oh, you're an employee of WCCO. I'm like, did you look that up? Because I've never been an employee of WCCO TV. I have friends there. For a while, 9 years, I was a part-time employee having my own show on WCCO Radio. They're two completely different entities. And right now, I'm a business owner. I don't answer to any media outlet but the Crisis Files. So that was my bias, the truth, the facts.
Do the facts matter anymore, Roshini?
They should. They do to me. They do to me, and I think they should to journalists.
And nobody wants to be corrected online, which is essentially a public space. How many times have you seen people go back and forth on social media and someone back down and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I have changed my opinion."
It's very true. It's very true. So I'm big on, do you read it a few times before you decide, do I really need to post this? You know? Any legal tips on this topic, Steve, that you can give our Crisis File listeners?
I mean, the easiest legal tip is stay off social media as much as possible.
Just stay away.
Particularly if you're trying to succeed as a small business, you got to be very cautious. Obviously, you who've got a public-facing small business can't really avoid that. I mean, you've got to be very careful, and you've got to think, would I say this in person? So a lot of the pragmatic advice is sometimes the best legal advice, because people say things online as the other crisis squad members have said that they would never say in person.
That is a good litmus
Yeah.
test. Would you say this if I was sitting right in front of you?
And-
It's a great litmus test.
Yeah, because generally, if you're not going to get away with that, you're probably not going to get away with it online.
One of the people who has maximized the use of social media and has a gajillion followers is Taylor Swift. And I want to talk about the Taylor Swift effect with the Crisis Squad. Who wants to start? Because there's so much juicy juice here.
Oh, they're looking at me because I said I was a Swiftie. I am a Swiftie. Okay, here's where I'm going to start. People are talking about the lyrics to her new music, and they are racy, they are sexual, they have innuendos. And so at first I thought, oh my gosh, look at her, like just going for what she feels like putting out to the world, despite the fact that there are millions of 7, 8, and 9-year-old, little kids that love her. There's also every single age range loves her. So at first I thought about that. And then I have been seeing people's thoughts, and I was swayed a little bit when they were like, what was the music we were listening to when we were younger? A, we didn't even understand some of those innuendos. B, nobody was scolding anybody. And so I thought about it, and I was like, just because it is a fact, millions of little kids love her, she's growing up with everybody.
Yes.
We've been listening to her singing since she's 15.
And Miley Cyrus did the same thing. She was a Disney darling and totally went the other direction. And they have choice, right? They have choice, right, Dr. Amari?
Yeah,
to do that.
I mean, I'm not a Swiftie, first of all, but I have been reading some things and listening to some things, some folks who are Swifties, and a number of things come to mind. The first one is what you talked about with that negativity bias, right? So when her albums talked about things that were hurtful or harming, right, we really locked in on that, like, yeah, that happened to me, I remember that, and we dwell on it. Now it seems like she's singing about some happy things, and we're like, wait, what happened to the sad ones, right? And so we're not thinking about the happy parts, we're thinking about the sad ones. That's the first thing. The second one is, as she writes her lyrics and kind of leaves the book open-ended for folks to create endings and interpretations, we all are attached to that, right? And we all find a way that we can attach to her career and who she is, from young kids to older, more seasoned folks, and everyone across the world.
Yeah, well, the Taylor Swift effect is very real. First of all, she is an amazing businesswoman. I mean, she really, everything that she touches doesn't just go gold, it goes what's the most valuable? Platinum? I mean, it goes beyond, whatever is beyond platinum. That's what Taylor Swift does. But I'm really interested, Jen, to hear from you about, is she doing it all right, or have you seen some missteps?
I think what's most amazing about her is in an age when somebody's hot one day and then we've forgotten about them 2 days later, that she has maintained not just relevancy, but a spot at the very top. I didn't like Taylor Swift in her early years because it was so manufactured and she was overly perfect.
Totally.
I I started to really like her when she went through her 20s, had the same struggles that everyone else had, and was really open about them. The fact that she was vulnerable with people and was not afraid to put that out there was when I started feeling like endeared towards her. And I think that is why she has continued her relevancy, is because she's continuing to somehow, even though it is of course manufactured, but she is still managing to live with a sense of authenticity that she's willing to share with the rest of us. And so we're seeing her go through all of these different phases in her life, and we can all recognize something in it, which is, I think, part of the key to success in this age of social media is we expect people to show a bit of their real selves.
Right. The authenticity really does matter. Steve, so Taylor is in a happy place because she's going to marry Travis Kelce. She is a gazillionaire, actually makes a lot more money than her fiance. Prenup, right?
Yeah,
There's a
for
prenup.
sure. For sure, there's.
What do you think
the
that prenup looks like, Steve Silton?
They're pretty much all the same. It
Tell
doesn't
us.
matter. Yeah, it's just, it essentially just says that the money that they both bring into this relationship, and again,
They get to keep.
He's not exactly a pauper. They get to keep. Now, the money that they're going to generate as a couple is going to get more complicated. And he is an entertainment property himself, not obviously at the level that she is, but. You know, it'll be an interesting prenup, and it'll be an interesting marriage. Yeah, it'll be an interesting marriage for sure. I mean, the marriage itself has a business component, as most marriages do, in the sense that, you know, they both essentially feed off each other. So she's a fascinating kind of talent, and what's interesting is we get to watch her grow up, as Jen says, right? We got to see her develop from essentially a kind of a teenage kind of
Absolutely.
Singer to kind of a more mature singer, right? It's like what people got to see with like a Sinatra or an Elvis, right? Like the whole kind of arc of her career.
Speaking of legal components, I want to talk about the crisis right now, the controversy. I like to call it a crisis in the WNBA. And we saw during the playoffs for the WNBA leading into the finals that the Minnesota Lynx coach, Cheryl Reeve, who is a very respected coach, got ejected from a game. Then she had, pretty heated, I'll just use that term, press conference afterward. And then Napheesa Collier came out recently and shared some choice words for the commissioner of the WNBA and bad officiating, according to her, and a lot of the players. Some of the other big stars, like Caitlin Clark, you name them, they've come out in support of Napheesa. So I know that, Steve, you're a huge, huge sports fan. They have platforms. We've talked about the age of influence is the name of this case file. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, it's an emerging league, and I think people look at essentially mature sports leagues like the NFL, the MLB, the NHL, and they think it's kind of predestined for success. And what people don't understand is that all leagues have had their period of incubation where there were trials and tribulations, right? The NBA essentially struggled for essentially their first 20 years, right? You forget that the NFL is essentially a makeup of two competitive leagues, which essentially had to come together. And you see the evolution of the WNBA, and now you see the emergence of these new stars, right?
Yes.
The Caitlin Clark and the Paige
With
Rickers.
very big platforms, and they're not getting paid huge salaries from the WNBA, but they're getting a lot from endorsements and commercials and all this other stuff.
Yes, they're essentially media stars inside and outside of their sport. And I think the WNBA is going to have to come to grips with that. And the WNBA at some point is going to have to move beyond being incubated by the NBA, which is essentially what they have been for the last 20 years, and kind of stand on their own. And I have no doubt they will. I mean, I think that they're gaining fans both essentially organically and essentially through the NBA. And I think it's going to be successful, but there's going to be some challenges and crises along the way, that is for sure.
Dr. Omari, the WNBA wants to be treated fairly, paid better, get up to some of the standards or the levels of the NBA. And, anyone else could say, well, you want the money, you got to take the hard knocks. You might get a fine. You can't cry about it. What are your thoughts on the equity side of this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very gendered conversation, right? And I mean, athletics has been and sports has been. We saw it with the women's soccer national soccer team for a number of years. A number of things that come into play. One of them is obviously the NBA, supports the WNBA financially in a lot of ways, and that's great. And also, if you support them but put way more money into one side and very little into another side, what do you think is going to happen? Well, you're going to have a situation where the return is lower. The other thing that I'll say is, as the WNBA grows, I get into this conversation all the time, and it even comes back to social media and what we were talking about earlier. I get these videos where people are saying, it's like clipped shots of air balls from the WNBA and, back and forth of misses. And they're like, this is why they don't get paid. And so then I have to go and find videos of NBA players airballing and not showing any effort and, missing layups or dunks and say, but how come they get paid? Right. And so this is reinforcing itself in ways, and we've seen it from so many different angles. Tennis with Serena Williams and Venus Williams, and it's been happening for far too long.
Yeah. Dr. Ziegler, your thoughts about just a lot of these players also, I've noticed in the WNBA, they've also been very open about some of their own personal issues, whether it's mental health, their lifestyle issues, all of those things. And that really wasn't something we grew up with our professional athletes.
That's right. Not at all. I mean, I think that the issue with the WNBA is this is the way it's going to have to be. They're going to have to fight. They're going to have to reclaim power. They're going to have to be loud. And so it's a good thing, in my opinion, we're talking about it. If this was status quo and everybody was going along and being like, oh, okay, I'm going to get fined if I say something, so we wouldn't be talking about it, and there would be no progress. We saw it in women's soccer, and we're going to see it here in basketball. So I applaud them being loud. I applaud them demanding the respect and the money and the support that they deserve. And, we're seeing women's soccer grow. That's, in my mind, what has preceded this is women's soccer. And so, like in Denver, they're going to have the first standalone women's soccer, their own stadium.
Wow.
Sold out. Season tickets are pre-sale, sold
Nice.
out. Big names behind it, Peyton Manning's behind that. So when you get, and this is one thing that I think is really interesting, one of the things we know about how do women advance their careers? By having a male mentor. And this is one of the things we see through research. If I can have somebody in my workplace who holds power, and most of the time that's going to be a male, if he can sort of sponsor me and support me and elevate me, all boats rise.
And hopefully that paradigm changes where it's a strong man or woman, or gender neutral person. I mean, I hope that we can change that before I die. I'd love that. And I am not anti-men. That's not what it's about. It's about equity. Jen, real quickly, I definitely want to get into the platform part of this. Nafisa would not have held that press conference if she didn't have a very big platform.
Are you talking about when she
made that statement and criticizing the officiating in the WNBA?
Yeah. I mean, as a reputation management pro, I used to advise to really just stay out of the fray, always take the high road, don't cause any controversy. I don't know. Now I'm with you. Like, be loud and proud and bold, and if you believe in something, put it out there or no one's going to pay attention. And for the companies that I advise, if you try to appease everyone and be neutral to everyone, you have nobody's support. So you might as well figure out who is most important to you and play to that audience.
All right, we're going to wind it down as I am always watching the clock. I'm going to ask each of these amazing thought leaders, my crisis squad, to give us one big tip that we should always keep in mind. And I'm going to start with Steve, so it's going to give everyone else a chance. And the challenge, especially for my dear friend Steve, is let's keep it to 30 seconds. What is that big tip And it could be from your own area of expertise, or it could be just what you've noticed in life and you want to share with crisis filers everywhere.
Yeah, boy, that's a tough one. And thank you for starting with me, by the way. And thank you for having me on, Roshini, as always. I mean, I would say, and this might be a bit of an odd kind of advice from a lawyer, but this is what I tell my young lawyers that come up, is don't be intimidated by the law and taking chances, right? Like, particularly if you're in a small business, there's a lot of risks. Risks are everywhere. Good small business owners are good at assessing risks, are good at seeking advice on how to minimize risks, but they're also good at taking risks. And oftentimes success is a direct correlation with the amount of the risk you take. So don't be intimidated. And I would say that plays into our social media discussion, because when everything you do is put online and every mistake you make is somehow amplified among people, it dampens people's desire to take risks.
Absolutely.
So don't let that or anything kind of stop you from taking chances.
Great advice, Jen.
One thing I advise my clients on all the time is make sure you know who you are and what your values are. And when that happens, then writing messaging when something bad happens is easy to do. You know when to apologize, you know when not to apologize. You also then know how to make decisions that are going to make sense for your business or organization. So get clear on your values, speak from them, and make sure that your decisions are consistent.
Dr. Abdul Omari.
I'm going to try to practice my own advice. Shut up and listen. Pay attention to what people are saying. Everything that you take in is a data point that you can draw correlations and use them in the future.
Active listening is a communication skill that's very underutilized. All right, Dr. Cheryl Ziegler.
I mean, there's so much to say, but I think that we should be putting out into the world the spirit of what we want to get back from it. So if you're a comedian, put out funny material. If you are a thought leader in economics, put out that kind of information. I think we really need to be mindful of how we're contributing either to the noise or the toxicity or the health and the happiness, the optimism. That's much less popular. We know that literally the algorithm does not reinforce happy, positive things. But I guess I'm going to be an optimist and just say, but if we flood it, if we really put that out there, it doesn't have to be everything's joyful, but just what's happened is we get reinforced for putting out that nasty stuff. So I guess I have a dream, I guess, that we can get reinforced by putting out some positivity.
And my big tip is listen to the Crisis Files, because I curate the thought leaders from around the country and some international that have been on our show, and we are trying to prevent the crises in your lives. So all you have to do is follow us on all the socials, Instagram, X, and YouTube, and go to thecrisisfiles.com. Check out our library of so far 168 episodes and counting. All right. It has been amazing. Hear more from the Crisis Squad. Go to the library on thecrisisfiles.com. You'll see a handy little search bar. Plug in Jen Hellman, Steve Silton, Abdul Omari, and Cheryl Ziegler. You'll find all episodes featuring these exceptional subject matter experts there. Thanks, Mall of America, for hosting. Visit MOA for shopping, eating, and entertainment whenever you visit the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Check out their site, mallofamerica.com. I'm Roshini Rajkumar. Join me next time on The Crisis Files.